Troy Galloway is a construction manager and consultant, commercial and residential builder, and a certified inspector for all commercial and residential buildings. And now, here is About the House with Troy Galloway.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to About the House. This is your humble host, Troy Galloway, owner of Galloway Building Services. And I'm really tickled everybody's joining us today. We got a great show coming up for you. And a little bit about the house, or this show program. It's a very unique type of program that we have. It's like your audio university of everything possible you could ever want to know about your home. We actually have people on here. We've had radon specialists, mold specialists, asbestos. We've had heating and cooling. Well, actually, we got a heating and cooling guy coming on here today, and which I'm really excited about. But it's like an audio university because it is on podcast and YouTube TV. And also hint. When you do find it out there on YouTube, hey, hit like and subscribe. We'd love to have all the support we can, and follow us for all the new shows. And we got tons of great information. So, and you could, because there is so much, you literally got to go back to it and listen. And we're getting a great following, and pretty excited about all you folks. And thank you very much for joining us and following us. Hey, like I said, my name's Troy Galloway. I own Galloway Building Services. And just like this radio show, we're very a unique company too. Yes, we do home and building and commercial building inspections. So if you're buying or selling your home, we could definitely help you with that. But what makes us absolutely unique is we are construction specialists. We do expert witnessing. We're registered for expert construction witnessing in the state of Missouri. We're expanding out throughout the Midwest. So if you ever have any troubles with your project, or which sadly that happens more often than not, and you got some issues going on, you give us a call. We come in, we check it out, they write up a report. We work with tons of great attorneys that can help you out with this kind of stuff. So, give us a call if that ever happens. Now, what's awesome about our company is that I don't know everything. But what I do know is fabulous people that do know and are experts in their industry that come onto the show, just like this fella that we've got coming on here right now. I've been trying to get him to come on the show for a while. We finally got him, and this is Jim Ramsey, owner of Dave Ramsey Heating and Cooling. I believe that's how you say it. Hey, is that right, Jim? Jump in here and introduce yourself, sir.
Well, that sounds pretty good to me. Been doing this for, about 40 years or so, I suppose. About ever since I was old enough to carry Dad's tool bag around. He started the business back, about 79, 80. And he retired. I took it over. So been doing it for a minute or two. Just a family-owned business, and just try to do what we can to help folks out.
Well, what made you follow in your father's footsteps, other than he made you go to work with him when you was younger? Same thing I did to my boys too. But yeah, what possessed you to get into this?
It's just one of those things, that it just kind of came natural since I'd done it for so long. So I just kept at it.
Well, folks, a little bit about Dave Ramsey Heating and Cooling is they are one of the leading HVAC companies in the Midwest, Tulsa, Oklahoma area. So he's calling up out of. We're doing a phone interview here with him, and they've well established. I mean, it's hard to find somebody down in and through that area that hasn't heard of this company. So we got somebody really fabulous on here today, and I'm a little bit arm twisting. I say arm twisting, but he's bigger than me, so I guess there ain't much arm twisting left of that no more. But hey, let me just jump right in here, Jim, and let me ask you a few questions here. We'll kind of get started. Here it is now. We're in May, and we're just, depending on what part of the country you're in, but we're just leaving our heating season. And I get asked all the time by folks, what should I be doing now as I'm leaving the heating season so next year I don't have problems when it gets cold?
As far as the heat goes, shutting it down, there's not a whole lot to it. Just kind of keep on with the normal, make sure you keep your filters changed for your air conditioning and so forth. That's just as important for your heat as it is for your air. Most of the newer units, they don't have pilots or anything on them, so you just got to try to keep it as clean as you can. If it's an outside unit, try to keep your grass and so forth out of it. If you do have one that has a standing pilot on it, especially if it's a mobile home, I recommend most people keep their pilots turned on all year round. Because a lot of people, they like to turn them off, save that little bit of gas. But if you keep that pilot turned on, it tends to keep the mud daubers and the birds and stuff from getting in there and building a nest over the summer.
Good point.
And that'll cause you a whole lot more problems than what that little bit of gas that pilot's going to use up. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot you can do for shutdown on regular gas furnace. If you got electric furnace, depending on your particular setup, make sure that you don't have any problems with your air conditioning in the summer as far as water leaks or so forth coming out of your coils. That'll tend to get down there and really cause some issues with your controls on those electric air handlers. Big deal is once it comes time to start it back up, make sure and give your guy a little heads up before it turns off cold. Get in there and turn it on, vacuum it out, do whatever you got to do to make sure everything's running good. You got your good gas pressure, and you just don't have a lot of buildup in there. Check and make sure you don't have any bad combustion going on, which is going to cause your CO2 problems or your carbon monoxide problems. It's just pretty straightforward on your heat side of it.
Well, you said about the combustion air. How do we need to hire somebody to come in to look at that to see about it? Because most of us wouldn't know what we're looking at. I do, but I know that's because I'm supposed to know. But I'd say the majority of people listening to this show, they don't know. Is there something they should be looking at, or is there any telltale signs, of the combustion air? Because as soon as you said the CO2, I know that red flags and ears popped up because we're getting it's pretty serious about this, with that poisoning. Is there something we could be looking for?
Well, yes and no. The biggest thing is if your unit was installed properly, you should have your venting coming in there that will allow for your combustion air. Depending on the situation, you'll have a secondary open pipe or a vent or something going to the outside. Have one that comes in up high, one down low, and it just looks like it just goes into your attic or something. And the problem with that is a lot of people think, hey, I just got this loose pipe. Why is it here? And they'll plug it up or do something like that and cover it up because it lets cold air or something in. But you got to have that so that your furnace will burn right. Now, there are some instances where you could just have one pipe in there, or it might be a vent cut into the floor, something along those lines. It might not even have a pipe. If it's in a specific equipment room, a part of the house that is big enough to actually handle, the air coming in for the enough combustion air. But more than likely on a typical residential installation, that's not going to be the case. You'll have to have some kind of outside combustion air brought in. So that's either going to be from a ventilated attic or from the outside. So if you've got a pipe like that and it's covered up, you need to uncover it. If you're not sure about it, then you probably need to have somebody come take a look at it.
So point is, if in doubt, call the specialist.
Exactly.
Because how many times have we all walked into a condensate line that's been blocked up, and people they think they got a plumbing issue up there if it's in the attic, and it's leaking down into the. Of course, you guys got a lot more attic units than we probably do here. But I see that people think they got a plumbing issues, and the crazy thing is, it's the condensate line that's clogged up. So,
right.
on the condensate lines, just a real quick, how can we best keep them clean? Or do you think they even clog up to even be a problem?
No, they never clog up, ever.
So that'll have black stuff inside of there that people ask me about. That's not to worry about, right?
Oh, shoot, no. I mean, what's a little bit of water damage, you know? Yeah. It depends on where your unit's at. Typically, any air conditioning system, no matter where it's at, the evaporator is going to build up kind of a slimy fungus in there, and that's just a byproduct. It's cool, it's wet, that stuff's just going to grow, and it will come loose, and it'll just make a sludge and kind of build up in your drains. Well, after a while, you know, it doesn't cause any problem season in, season out. That stuff will, over the winter, it'll just kind of dry out and make just this black, crusty stuff. Then next season starts the process all over again. Now the old stuff will kind of break loose and it'll get kind of pushed into your drains. One place it's going to plug up is right there at your drain hole coming out of your main pan. That's always an issue.
Okay.
Another place is it will find any kind of a low place in your drain line and just kind of sit there until it builds up, just kind of like sediment over time. A few things you can do with it. One is you can have one of these special UV lights put in, and that will inhibit the growth of any kind of a fungus and algae and that kind of thing. So that kind of prevents that to begin with. Another thing is you can have these tablets put in your pan, and you have to have them done every so many months, every 3 months or so, depending on the tablets that you get. That will help. One of the biggest things that we always try to do is make sure that we put a clean out right there at the pan.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get into it, and you maybe put a little bleach or something in your drain to help kill that stuff out. You can get to it so you can blow it out easy. You can get on it with your shop vac and suck it out, and just kind of keep that stuff cleaned out of there, because it does cause some major issues. And if it happens to be in an attic or something, that could be some big time money if it gets to running over your ceilings and so forth. Better off to get that thing cleaned out than have to call the sheetrock guy.
Yeah, not to mention that moisture up there in that dark, damp areas, like, whether it be in the attic or in a utility room, if it's leaking like that, mold is another problem that we sometimes encounter out there from this. I think,
especially if it runs over and gets like underneath your secondary pan or something where it's just going to kind of build up and set for a while underneath the platform. Now, typically up in an attic or something, it's not going to be too bad because it's going to stay hot and it'll keep that stuff killed out. But if it's in a closet and gets underneath your platform there, where it's more of a conditioned space, it's going to stay nice and cool. And that's going to grow and turn into a big hairy mess. You sure don't want that.
No. Well, so I got some questions here because I did put this out and get some folks before we had the show, and to get questions from people. And some of the questions that I got was that got a brand new 90% efficient furnace, and that it's there's rust coming out of the end, and it's rusting and corroding my grate. Why is this a problem with this high efficient furnace, or is because my other furnace didn't do that? Can you kind of expand on that? What's happening with that, and why a high energy efficient furnace puts out a nasty condensate?
And what is it causing to rust?
Well, because they had the high energy efficient furnace put in. And now it's causing, some rusting coming out of the condensate because, and that's another. Actually, I kind of should have jumped because there's two. They actually wrote there's two condensate lines coming out. One that they only used to have the one. So I should have read that question first. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead on that one.
Oh. Yeah, the deal is with an old 80% furnace or 78, whatever, your old 60%, whatever. That was just your heat's going up. It's a 80% furnace. That means you're only getting 80% of the money you're putting into your gas is actually turning the heat that's going into your house. The rest of it is going up your flue and out in the air. With the new 90s and 95%, you're actually gaining a bunch more efficiency, and 90 to 95% of your money that you're putting into it is actually being turned around and put back into the house. And the way they did this was by putting a secondary heat exchanger in there. So you still have your bigger heat exchanger, just like similar, to your older stuff, but now it has like a coil, like your evaporator coil, for your cooling. And as that gas goes through there on its way to go out the flue, it cools down more, and to the point that now it's just condensing. So all your flue gas will have a certain amount of moisture in it. And when you cool it down as much as what they're doing with these high efficiency furnaces, it will actually produce the water to an extent that it has to drain out, just like your air conditioner does. And it's going to be kind of, over time, it'll start to get kind of rusty or something, simply because you're taking out, it's coming through the metal in your heat exchanger. And that will begin to corrode some, and you're going to get a little bit of junk out of it.
We're ASHI and NASHI certified, also inspection company, and some of the things we're getting from our reports, which our HVAC people do not put them on. As a matter of fact, I've never seen one installed, but they're filters. They're inline filters for the, I would call it secondary, or your condensate from it's coming from a high energy efficient. Are you folks seeing many of these filters in your area, that inline filters for their condensate? Because we're hearing that on our old cast iron drain lines, that this nasty corrosion is, if it's rusting our grates out, it's rusting out our cast iron lines. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that, or any experience with that yet?
I've not heard of anything as far as any filters go, but you have to treat your drain lines different as far as these go, because it is corrosive. So you can't run it through metal pipe. The same reason that you don't use a metal flue for these 90% furnaces, you have to use plastic, because it does causes more condensation. If you use a metal flue, you would have that condensation built up inside that liner, and you would rot out your metal pipe. So you have to use a plastic PVC or something like that condensate drain, and you can't dump it into anything that's going to be metal. It has to be treated differently. So you don't want to dump it into your sewer, your septic, or anything like that. You need some kind of a French drain or some place to send it. One, so it's not going to freeze, and two, so that it's not going to cause any corrosion issues. You wouldn't want to drain it out onto your sidewalk. Over time, it's going to eat out your concrete.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So you'll want to put that someplace where it's not going to cause an issue. And, if you got like a metal siding or something, you don't want it running down the side of your house for sure. So you'll want it to kind of go out and get into, usually some kind of a French drain is usually best.
So I guess then those who have the systems up in their attic, when I see the condensate line coming out, that condensate line should not be just dumping on the siding. It should be run continuous pipe all the way to the ground and out to the drain. Is kind of what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I do see that, where they just dump right out of the side of the house on these here drains or furnaces, or up in the attic. So, but yeah, we've been hearing that, but I've not been seeing it. It's I don't know. Maybe somebody sold something to this, inspecting companies. Now they're just trying to push a product. That's why I thought it was a great question and why it was asked by me. Another question I'm asked: how come you just kind of went to that a minute ago about the plastic PVC pipe for our exhaust. But the question is, how come it's going out the side of my wall but not up a chimney?
You've always had the option to run one straight out through a wall, so to speak. But there's a little more leeway with the 90%. So you see it a little bit more often. And mainly, it all has to do with where the unit's installed. And you have to still follow the guidelines of what the manufacturer requires. It still has to have a certain amount of lift, and it can't run very far. So for however far you want to run it horizontally, you have to have X number of rise to it. So if you're like installing a unit just on an outside wall, a lot of times it's easier and quicker and more efficient just to stub it through the wall to the outside and terminate it right there, as opposed to maybe going through a second floor, another story, and then up through the attic and going that way. Mm-hmm. So just depending on what the manufacturer's guidelines are as to what you can do with it.
I know when we at my office, when we had ours, the chimney or the HVAC company, which was a great company, they're no longer in business because they just shows how old it is. But they put it up through the chimney, which I thought was the normal way. Then we started seeing it going out the walls. But now, as a home building company, because we still do some homes, spec homes mostly, and just we don't really do it for the public unless they're past customers, and they just got to have us do it. So I don't want to discourage any of the past customers that are listening to our show. But so this is a good one here, is that we find that we have issues with during heating season. I guess, and that's the only time I've picked it up. So maybe it's something else happening that I'm not knowing about, where that line gets blocked going out the house from birds. So a bird nest is that for you? Do you run across that very often? And sadly, I've run across it more than I care to talk about because I don't like them late night calls.
Run into it quite a bit. Not necessarily with the smaller, like regular 80% or 90% furnaces. I don't run into that much. I do run into it a lot on mobile homes. Wasp and dirt daubers, I run into a lot of that on everything. And it doesn't take much of a nest, bird or otherwise, to get in there and cause some major problems. And what can you do, used to be on the old furnaces, you always had that cap up there.
Right.
And that would keep most birds out. With these new ones, just kind of depends on where you're at. Like where we are, you can't put any kind of a vent over it. If you do, you have to make it extra big and do some weird stuff to it. You can't just put the cap on there that the unit comes with, because it blocks your surface area down too much for the capacity. Code says you can't do it because it blocks it down. But yet at the same time, code's going to tell you follow the manufacturer's recommendations. So, manufacturer says put a cap on it, keep the birds out. Code says no, you can't do it because it cuts down on your too much your area. Well, I can see their point. You have to have that 2, 3, 4 inch, whatever size pipe you have for that unit. And if you put one of those little grates inside that, block it off, that's a bunch. Now you could put if you put some like half-inch wire, something like that, something that's not really going to block any air off of it, okay, that's fine. But then you get back into the corrosion issue, and that's going to rot that wire in no time. And then you got a big chunk of wire that falls off down inside your flue. So typically, if you've got it run up through your roof, up high, something small like that, you don't usually have a lot of issues with it. If you do happen to come out of it, your wall horizontally, then you've got a kind of a flat surface with a hole. You'll see more issues with that. because that bird or whatever can just kind of fly up there and he's going to light like he's finding a hole in a tree. There are some advantages and disadvantages to either way you go. And aside from getting up there and just blocking it up for the summer, you just got to kind of hope for the best.
Well, what can we do to be proactive to make sure come season it's time to heat it up, fire up the old furnace? What can we do as a consumer to make sure that we're not going to have this problem before it's too late? Do we call you, or is there something? Like the mud daubers, it's the half-inch thing. Well, heck, them mud daubers half-inch don't bother them any. That actually, if anything, that makes it easier for them to build nest. But what can we do as a consumer to help make sure we don't have a bird nest inside of our line? Is there anything?
Well, at the very least, before it gets cold, turn that unit on and check it and see what's going on. Make sure if it's working okay. If you got any problems, does it not even come on? Do you have any smells? Does something look funny? And get right on it if you notice an issue, and get somebody called and get them out there before it gets bad. It's a good idea in general just to have someone come out and service it and check it out anyway. And like I say, before the weather gets bad, because then, if you wait, you turn this on and there's 6 feet of snow outside, your heat doesn't come on, or you're getting a lot of sooty smell or something like that. Well, now your service guy, he's booked up for 3 weeks and you got no heat. So it needs to be done early, and he can check it out, see if you got any blockage, make sure that your flue's venting good. And one thing people need to really look out for is if you notice something if it's somewhere where you can see it, your flue's up on your roof or sticking out of your wall or whatever, pay attention to it. Notice what it looks like. Is it kind of some shiny metal or PVC normally? And all of a sudden you go to look at it one time and that looks kind of black. It looks darker. Something's not right. Well, a lot of times if it's not burning right because you have a nest or something's in there, kind of got that flue blocked off a little bit, it'll cause that thing to start sooting up, and it's going to, turn the thing black. And a lot of times, depending on how the wind's going, you'll smell it, and you'll know something's up. You want to get to it before it gets to that point. So at least look at it and see. Just being observant is a good way to see if there's anything going on. But call somebody and have it serviced and checked out before heating season actually is in full swing.
Well, that's good. Them are some good advice. Now, we're getting ready to go into our cooling season, and you folks might have already had to turn your ACs on down there in Tulsa, but up here where I'm at in the St. Louis area, we're we've had a couple of times we could, but we're still kind of cool. But what can we do to be proactive to make sure we don't have any AC issues? I got a few questions in regards to that too. But so is there something we could be doing to make or should we just call once again a service guy to make sure, especially our seniors, make sure that everything's working fine for them, because now it does help senior citizens, makes their life a little more bearable. Maybe I even swear that could even add years of longevity to one's life having a good conditioned area.
It just makes everybody happier, if you're not sitting there eating your post toasties in the morning and sweat running down your nose.
Oh, yeah. Like the old days.
Yeah. When everybody had a swamp cooler.
Yeah.
You're lucky. You need to check it out. There's definitely more you can do toward keeping your air conditioner up than you can typically do on your own with your heat. Some people are actually comfortable enough that they can go out there and they can wash their coil out on the outside But typically, most people will need to call a service guy and have him come out and check it out. He'll need to wash it out, make sure your coils are good and clean outside. And if it's a newer unit, basically it just comes down to some cleaning and visual inspections. They don't really have oil motors you can oil anymore and that kind of thing. If you've got an older unit, then you may still have something that can be oiled. But you'll want it cleaned out, wash it out good. You can do some visual inspections, make sure your fan blades aren't cracked, make sure you don't have any big dents or gouges, like maybe somebody bumped into it with a weed eater, or maybe the neighbor's cat got over and chewed on your thermostat wires outside.
Yeah. Well, we'd be having us a dead cat then, wouldn't we? Yeah.
I have seen that happen a bunch.
Oh man. Well, I've seen where squirrels have done it, but I didn't even think about the cats. But it was squirrel problems. Hey, I got a question that we get. Not, a lot of home inspectors they call this, and I've always been curious about really just how important that we think it is. So, and that is on our coils out there. Or it's kind of just so you know what it is, but so folks are out there listening, that part that looks like a radiator. It's got all them little fins, and they call it raking. The inspectors, they call it raking them. So as for instance, if it's been hail damaged and they're dented up real bad, and they say to rake them, open them up. Tell us about what you think about that. Is that why that works, or really not a big deal?
Most units anymore, most manufacturers have a pretty good hail guard on their stuff. So you don't really have that much of an issue anymore as far as maybe hail or the neighbor kid getting over with his finger, and drawing designs in it.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that.
You see that a lot around schools and churches, and especially those old window units.
Yeah.
Kids walk out there and they just take their fingers and they'll draw little designs in them. If that happens, because you do still have some of those out there that they don't put much on there for a guard. If they're not beat up bad, they just got a few little obvious dings that just looks something you can just kind of see, no big deal. But if they're beat up pretty good, say maybe even you got out there, tried to wash it, and if you don't spray it right, you'll fold those fins over. And then you need to get a special little comb or maybe an end of a pencil or something, and you have to get out there and very carefully comb it, break it, and straighten those fins out. And some of them are very thin, and you got to be careful with it because you'll tear them. But if you don't get those straightened out, it's just like you went out there and you put a blanket around it, or you filled it full of dirt. It's not going to get the air over it, so it's not going to transfer heat like it's supposed to. And so the unit's just not going to work. You might as well not even be running your air conditioner if it's very bad. It's probably going to cost you more money and not do you any good. So there's things like that you need to watch out for. Make sure your fins are clear always, whether it's dirt or whether it's they're bad damaged, hail or whatever. Like when you're mowing, make sure you blow your grass away from your unit. In fact, I tell people turn your unit off when you're mowing out there around your unit until you get well away from it.
That's a good point.
If you're running it and the wind's whipping around while you're mowing, even though you're blowing away from it, it's apt to blow right over there next to it, and it's just going to get sucked in. Another thing that most people do not ever think about is if you have a male dog, you got to watch him around there. If that dog or a neighbor dog or something comes over there and gets to where it urinates on your unit, they typically are going to keep going right back to that same spot. And that will destroy a unit.
Oh, wow. That's a good point.
I've had that happen quite a bit. It will, if it's got a regular hell guard on it, it'll rot that off, and you're going to see some issues with it. It's going to rust and corrode. But what you're not going to notice is that all the aluminum fins around that are probably gone or have turned to dust, and it will start to eat through the copper. So that part can be completely gone before you ever notice there's a problem. And at that point, yeah, it's basically just a new unit.
Ooh, that's a lot of money. Well, tell the folks exactly what them fins are supposed to be even. So we're watching out for the fins, but tell the folks exactly what the fins even supposed to be doing in this unit. So they so it puts it in perspective to why it's so important.
It's just like the fins on the radiator on your car, or basically even just an old radiator, in your house, or one of these old oil heaters that you'll see with the little big waves, on it, big tube fins looking deals. It's just a way to transfer heat. So you've got the refrigerant that comes from the coil in the house, and it's actually picking up heat in the house, brings it outside, gets compressed down, goes through the copper tubing outside in that coil. And that is then transferred into those little fins, and the fins carry that heat out and dissipates into the air. So if it's blocked off where the air can't get through there, or if they're mashed over to where there's not much surface area actually contacting the air, then they can't do their job. They have to be able to have good air contact on either side of that fin, so it can get rid of that heat, get it out of your house.
So that leads to another question that we get asked a lot, and if you could just bear with us on this one, is that how come one of my pipes coming out of the house is super hot during the summertime when I'm running it, and you can't touch it, and the other side sometimes it gets froze up, and I got insulation around it. How come it's hot? Was the first question, and the second question is should I be taking that insulation off so as that, which I know your answer to this, but the folks don't. Why should they take their insulation off so it doesn't freeze up?
No, you don't want to take the insulation off. If it's freezing up, you have another problem.
Yeah.
You should always have one, usually the bigger line, is going to be cooler. It's not necessarily it's going to be beer can cold and sweating anymore. Most of the time, yes, it will, but not all the time. It's going to be cool, at least. And the other line, the smaller one, should be warm, not hot, but it ought to be warm to the touch, warmer than your body temperature for sure. If it is hot, then you've got a problem. If it's too hot, you can't hardly reach down and touch it. You need to get a hold of somebody. You've either got some charge issue, dirt issue, airflow issue, something on that outside unit needs to be checked out, because you should be flowing liquid through there for the most part at this point. But if it's hot, you're actually getting hot gas in there, and so that unit is not condensing properly like it should. The other line, if it is freezing up, then you're going to have some issues inside, more than likely. It could be low on gas, but still, it's got to have enough gas to cause it to freeze up, but it could be low on charge. Most of the time, you're looking at an airflow problem, which is check your filter. Those filters need to be checked regularly. If they get dirty, block off the airflow, it drops the pressure on that inside coil and causes it to freeze up. It could be, if you haven't checked your filters or changed them regularly in a while, your evaporator coil could be dirty. It might need to be cleaned. Your blower motor could be dirty. Most of the time, that's the issue. It could be something, refrigerant flow restriction, something like that, will cause that to happen. But most of the time, it ends up being just it's dirty.
So, and I have another question here, and I think it kind of falls right into line of that, is that how come my ductwork is rusting? Is there water running through my ductwork? And I guess this is probably happening, well, I know it's happening mostly during the cooling season, but expand on that, why the folks getting rusted ductwork? Because actually, I don't know about your area, but some of our ductwork is so bad from rusting out that it literally is rusted all the way through.
Well, kind of depends. Are you talking about ductwork in the attic or in the floor?
Well, it'd be ductwork. Well, and we have basements, but it would be ductwork. Because now our ductwork in our attics are mostly a vinyl, flexible ductwork. We don't really have hard ductwork up here. Do you have hard ductwork in your attics? Is that what you normally use? What do you guys use down there?
It's kind of a 50-50. Most people are getting to where they use a lot more flex, but there's a lot of steel goes in the attics.
Did you just insulate that?
Yeah. The flex is a whole lot easier to do, but, there's advantages to having the steel. So it's just kind of a customer preference. But if it's rotting out, rusting under the floor, it could be a few things. One, it could be that it just needs to be insulated better. Maybe there's moisture buildup under the floor. Something maybe corrosive in the earth around it causes it to happen. The metal is laying on the ground or too close to the ground to cause it. But more than likely, the ductwork is going to be below the unit. Say the unit's going to be in the house, and then the ductwork ties in and runs under the floor. It's very possible that you have some kind of drain issue. Drain line's plugged up, something like that, and water's getting down into it. And maybe it's building up in your plenum and it's running out into the unit. Mm-hmm. And if you get water standing in those pipes long enough, that's going to cause a problem, and it'll cause it to rust. Another thing is if your insulation isn't right. If you're getting holes in it, you shouldn't be able to anywhere along the seams or any place be able to put your finger in there and touch metal. If you can, your insulation's not tight enough. It's not sealed up because every one of those seams should be sealed.
Now you're talking about our insulation around our ductwork.
Yes, okay. The insulation around the pipes. Uh-huh. So if you've got that going on, if you've got anywhere that you can get air to it, if you can touch it, then you can sure get air to it. And if that pipe is running in the middle of summer, it's going to be cold. And so it's going to sweat and condense just like, a glass of iced tea sitting there on the counter. And as that starts to do that, starts to sweat, condense, it's going to kind of drip and run around the pipe and run off into the insulation itself on the bottom. And now after a while, that's going to soak that insulation. And it's going to cause it to sag. It's going to look like you just got a wet diaper hanging off of it. And as it does that, it's just going to stay there, and it's going to start to rot it on the bottom. Two, it's going to weight down that insulation to the point that it causes it to break down, and it's going to eventually pull it loose and cause your insulation to start to come off. And then the problem's just going to get worse. So it could be water running into it or poor insulation is basically the two deals. Insulation is usually the biggest cause.
Actually, here's a secret that you probably already know it, but what we learned several years ago when we have our ductwork that's running, and actually we learned this on our multi-million-dollar homes, but now we're kind of using it all over in all our homes. But is that when our ductwork is in between floors, that we get the condensation issues and they drip into the floor. And which would be the ceiling above, and causes us some issues. So what we've been doing is using a fiberglass batt insulation up underneath it, not just for insulating it, because that would be a non-insulated area between floors, but because it picks up the condensate and being blown glass, inorganic material, mold doesn't grow. And mold is a big thing, especially here up where we're at. We have a lot of mold issues. So we're starting to use that. Now, our rock wool insulation, I guess, could also be used for that. But so them are good. Now, one of my pet peeves as a building engineer is that I have troubles with this flex, and I'm wanting your professional's opinion on this. But I do know that I see that on our flex ductwork, especially in the attics, we don't really see, where I'm at, we don't really see it in our basements. Rarely do we ever see, and if we ever see it in a basement, that tells us right off that that's a handyman job. But up in our attics, we get such horrible sagging. And when we get to sagging of our, and these guys, these HVAC guys, these tinners, they just seem like they just don't seem to get it through their heads and they're sagging. And then that restricts a great amount of airflow. And then my unit's working twice as hard. I'm getting at the far end of the house, from the unit, we're having trouble getting our, a good airflow, a good cooling or whatnot going to it. Now, but I complained about that, and my one of the fellas that we've used, and I really like their company, is that actually Nisik Heating and Cooling up here, is he said that there's a limited warranty even on that material in the attic of ductwork. Is that true, or is he just telling me that because he doesn't want to run it?
You mean limited warranty on the actual
the material
ductwork itself?
Yeah, on the material. He said, I don't recall like a 10-year warranty before it just starts to break down because of the heat. Of course, the animal's eating on it. That's another animal. There's no warranty for animal abuse.
Okay, so not necessarily a limited warranty, but a limited life expectancy.
Okay, that probably I probably worded it wrong. Yes, sir. That's probably what he meant.
I haven't actually seen anything like that. Now, some of the older stuff had that Mylar backing on it. If you ran the section of roof that had maybe an invent or something where some light could get to it, that stuff would break down. I've gone to attics and seen where somebody running right next to a vent or something like that, and it just disintegrates. The newer stuff has kind of got that foil backing,
right?
Extra thick insulation. I've not seen any issues with that. That stuff seems to hold up really well.
Good. Good. That is something that we're not seeing a whole lot of yet, but except on newer construction. But we see on the older, we see that with the older section stuff out there, the older ductwork. But and the airflow is that's always a problem. And as a builder, we have a lot of our 2-stories buildings, and it's a battle. When we have our unit, our furnace and cooling down in the basement, we try to pump that up through the walls up to our second floor. Well, our floors are pretty busy, our walls are busy. And and it's hard to get it up there. So I always recommend that we actually get a unit up in attic for our upper level, and then one down for our basement unit would be for our lower unit. But what is that something that you recommend, or is there a better system that's more economical, or how would you recommend that we attend to these 2-stories like that?
Yeah, you really want to try to get the unit as close to where the work is. And I got to tell you, I hate them in the attic.
Oh, I hate them in the attic, too. I'm getting too dadgum old to crawl up in there and belly around in that insulation and fight the squirrels off, and Lord only knows what else is in there.
And I tell you what, we've had as many post-toasties as I have, trying to fight a squirrel in the attic ain't too easy. You really don't want to put – I've seen it happen, and it's never works out good. If you try to put all your units for a house – like in one central equipment room, usually like in a basement or something, and you're trying to go up to a second or even third floor, that's just not really going to work out well. You're taking most of the volume from that blower that you need to distribute that air over, your 2,000 square feet, and you're using it up before you even get it upstairs. So, like you said, it needs to be in the attic or in a closet or something, even on that floor that it's going to be doing the work.
I like the closet idea.
So then you're immediately, whatever air you're pushing is getting pushed to somewhere that it needs to be in that section of the house. And you're not wasting it trying to just get it delivered up there. We don't have the issue with the basements here very much, but you do run into it quite a bit with, maybe they got a really big house and sometimes they'll want to save on space. And so they'll want to put both the units at one end of the house. And you end up with the same issue. You're trying to get that unit all the way somewhere else. Just got to suck it up, build, take up a little extra square footage or something, build you another closet, put you a good access door into the attic or something, and put the unit where it needs to go.
Now,
get it closer to where the work is.
Can we tell our wives that Mr. Jim Ramsey said that they have to give up part of their shoe closet for why we can have proper HVAC? Can we blame Jim?
Nope. That's on you.
I had to throw that out there.
I am not about to tell your wife nothing.
Oh, well, that's because she won't hear nothing anyway, so you might as well not even waste your breath. She's not here, so I could talk like that now.
Yeah. Well, you talk like that all you want. I'm trusting that she's gonna know this. She's just gonna pick it up by ESPN or something.
Well, yeah. Well, they have that sixth sense, and besides them, my wife knows your mother, and they all know, and knows your wife, and we are in so much trouble. But hey, besides, we're going to move off that track because we already know we're in trouble. But so you and I have talked a couple of times about this, I believe it was a Freon line. And first I want to add, and then we'll wrap it up with these last two questions here. And I do appreciate your time because I know you've actually taken off time from work to help me do this show today. And I'm greatly appreciative of that. But first question is why in the world do we got all these different Freons, and why can't I get old Freon? And is it really true that we only have, what's going on with the Freon deal? It seems crazy. Every few years we got a new Freon system, and the last one's supposed to be killing every bird in town.
Well, what answer do you want? Do you want the official answer, or do you want my explanation?
I want your explanation, because the official answer I know is a government answer, and we can't trust anything the government says.
Yeah. I think it just boils down to a money issue. If they switch the Freon on you, the old Freon is going to go up a bunch because it's exorbitant right now. And so if you got an older unit that uses that, you're going to have to pay a premium price to keep Freon in it, or you're going to have to pay to do a retrofit for it. New Freon, well, you have to have a new unit to run the new Freon. If you're doing, switching out to regular, the new AC setup, or like I say, you had to use the new Freon to do, or a replacement Freon to do the old R22. But this 410, I think this whole thing was just a money deal. They get rid of the old stuff. Now you have to spend money to go buy new equipment, and then you'll have to buy a new Freon. And I've even heard that it's not too far off in the works that they're going to do away with that Freon.
I heard that too.
So they'll be switching to something else.
Yeah.
So, whether there's any truth to that or not, I don't know. I've just kind of heard it through the rumor mill. But it doesn't surprise me. They'll do away with this, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, I'd be surprised if they don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
After this many years, I've seen several different Freon changes. Now, you was telling me a story about something blowing up with the Freon line. Tell us that story about, I think maybe I'm getting my stories confused. Tell us what happened, because it sounded like it was wildly dangerous.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. This new Freon runs at really high pressure anyway. And, you go to these different classes and so forth when they're trying to tell you how to use this new stuff and how to charge it and problems to look out for and things you need to do to head it off. Well, they're going to tell you there's nothing wrong with this. You always have these, everybody's concerned about, oh, you're going to have an issue and something's going to happen and it's going to blow up on you. Never had that happen. Well, I don't see why it wouldn't. One of the concerns that most people have always had is that, okay, somebody has gone out there and worked on this particular unit, and the condenser's dirty. It gets dirty. It runs your pressure up. And so they don't take the time to wash it, or they just don't really know what to look for, and maybe they bypass the safety control in it. So now you're running with extra high pressure with no safety. And now say your fan shuts off. Well, now your pressure is just going to shoot through the roof. So instead of running with 500 pounds of pressure, now you're looking at, who knows, 800, 900, and something's going to give. Well, this particular deal wasn't any one of those scenarios, but it's just to tell you what could possibly happen there. This was with a new type of refrigerant line. Well, they ran the line, and it's kind of a poly pipe setup. Really neat stuff. But this was right after it first came out, and nobody had put out any warnings, or I guess maybe they didn't even know that you shouldn't put this particular size of pipe on a heat pump. Works fine for air conditioner, just don't put it on a heat pump. And so they put this in, and apparently at 1.8 inches was too big. So it doesn't have the structural integrity that maybe 7/8 or 3/4 does on high pressure heat pump setup. But this customer's telling me about it, that he was gone, his wife, his kids are there, and they hear something. They thought something hit the house, just a really loud bang, and then something else. They didn't know what. Well, they go outside and look, and this unit is actually sitting out behind their shop, and it had blew out the bottom of that refrigerant line. Nothing wrong with the unit. It just something about being on that heat pump hammered it. Something when it shuts off, switches over. They never could really explain to me what the deal was. But it blew a hole in there, probably about 8 inches or bigger, split in the bottom of it, and just laid it out flat.
Wow.
And this was a 5-ton unit, and it had picked that unit up and was actually had it tilted over to one side, holding up with that, nothing but the refrigerant line was holding it.
Oh.
And it was 20 foot to the bottom of their eaves on their shop. It had blown a hole in the dirt and shot that dirt up and splattered all the mud and everything up under their eaves. Pieces of it was out in the yard. So it was a bad deal.
Like a bomb.
Yeah. And had that been like inside of a wall or in your attic, yeah, that would not be something you want to be around.
Oh.
So they can always find something else to blame it off on. You know, the refrigerant company's going to blame it off on the piping company. The piping company's going to say it's the refrigerant company or this or that. Thing is, if that had been on an old school unit with the lower pressure system, that probably never would have happened.
Wow.
But this new high pressure refrigerant is just waiting for problems to happen. And I'm sure if they knew that there was a problem there, or they do now, I don't think they knew anything about it at the time, but somebody else has seen this issue happen, be it the line, or whether it's because somebody has bypassed safeties or the unit just got too dirty, or who knows what. There's got to be more problems out there than just what I've seen with this new refrigerant.
Well, once again, they throw something at us that's not been fully tested and confirmed of its safety, and the government approves it, and there it goes, and we have to just bear with the consequences of somebody else's profit margin. At least that's my opinion. So,
you know, they spend all that money and testing and all this stuff to go with this refrigerant for whatever reason, just a money deal. When they were using the refrigerant they had in Europe, for years, and it's pretty much a direct replacement for the old R22. And in fact, I've used some of it here. And so instead of just going straight to that uses lower pressure already and works almost identical to pressures of a R22, they switched us to this stuff. So there was somebody getting their pockets padded. Had to be.
Mm-hmm. Sure does look like it, don't it? Well, if it smells like a skunk, it probably has got a stripe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for coming on here. And, I'd love to have you come back on and we could talk more about heat pumps and ground source units. And, I mean, there's a whole bunch more questions that people have asked me about the ground pumps, heat pump systems and ground source and all these other. So I'm going to have to try to talk you into coming back on another time and kind of share with us all more about that. But I really appreciate you have given us a ton of great information on this today, and I greatly appreciate it. Tell the folks your phone number, if you have a website or anything, how they can get a hold of you if they have any questions. I know you're out of the Oklahoma area, but this show goes all over the country. But tell them how folks in your area how can they find you? I know you're busy. I know you're not looking for a whole bunch more work, but now that they know you, you're probably going to get a call.
Well, they can just look me up. I'm in the book. Look me up online, Dave Ramsey Heat and Air.
You got a phone number, sir?
918-756-2909.
Thank you, Jim. And hey, folks, and if you guys ever have any construction issues or any kind of inspection issues that you need to make sure want to take care of, whether you're buying or selling a building, home, or commercial, like I said, we also do construction expert consulting work. Give us a call. My office number is 636-394-3112. You can easily find us anywhere, www.gallowaybuildingservices.com. You can find us on our webpage. We're just all over social media. It's hard not to stumble across us. So, well, folks, thank you for listening to our show. Jim, thank you for jumping in here and giving us all this wonderful advice. Tell the family I said hi, and we will be talking at you later, sir.
Thanks for having me, Troy. It's been a blast.
All right. Thanks, sir. Bye-bye.
Sponsored by Troy Galloway and Galloway Building Services, your top choice for professional home inspections in the St. Louis area. GallowayBuildingServices.com.